It's getting on.
Don't mute.
Good afternoon, viewers.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Yeah.
I need to, while everybody gets ready, Mr. Giridhar is here. No. 1 minute. A few more people are yet to come, but Mr. Giridhar, can we just begin so that they can join as and when they come? Is that okay with you? You're muted, sir.
If you move, I know that I can see my light myself or not. Yeah. That's good.
Okay, we go on to the next session, which is Education Shaping Minds in Challenging Times. And we have a wonderful team who's joining us here. And the moderator, Mr. Giridhar, Chief Operating Officer, Aziz Prem University. And we have Mr. K.C. Ramamurthy, Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, Professor Kalpana Sarathi, TIS, Professor Sudhir K. Sinha, Professor, Founder Director, CSR, Lalita Chako, Founder Director, School Direct, and Dr. Nan Liu, Associate Professor, Institute for Natural Sciences, Shanghai, Jiao Tong University. So over to you, Mr. Giridhar. The floor is yours.
No, I can't see myself. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. I think a few of our members are still to join in. I think the panel is still getting ready.
Mr. Giridhar, we cannot hear you. There is some issue with the audio. No, we cannot.
Can you hear me though?
Yes, I can hear you, ma'am.
Okay, that's good enough.
Yeah.
Good.
No, we still cannot hear Mr. Giridhar.
How are you, Meghalai? Let's just make small talk until they all come in.
Yes,
I've
we are
just
doing.
heard, I know I've heard so much about you from Lakshmi.
Really?
But yes,
Oh,
because
nice,
we
nice,
were the
nice of her.
initial small team that started the ALL in Bangalore. With
Yes,
Lakshmi
yes.
and Ritu, myself, Priya, and a few others, of course.
Okay, that was
And then,
5 to 7 years back.
absolutely,
I think,
at
right?
least 7 years ago. Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, so we can hear you, Giridhar.
Okay, that was my headset that I tried connecting to the laptop and it played tricks on me.
No problem at all. No problem. We can hear you pretty good now.
Part of life, very, very small issues in life at this time, if I put that in perspective. So we're still just the three of us, Lalita, Sudhir, and actually
Yes.
Meghalai is there. And Just the three of us. We're waiting for Nana and for Ramurthy and I think who else? Kalpana.
Oh yeah, there
Yeah,
she
Kalpana
is.
sir.
Hi, Nana.
Hi, lovely to see you.
Hello.
Sorry, I was
to
having
see
some
you.
internet problems.
Hi Nana. We only exchange mails, so here's a face to go with it.
Hi.
Okay, so Nana is there. We are now we are past almost near 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
What do you suggest, Meghala?
I suggest you please go ahead, Giridhar, because
Okay.
as and when they come, they can just join because we're always short of time, so
Okay.
you can just go ahead with the people here.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So we'll begin, and as I said, it's a very short session, so there's no question of putting up a theme and stuff like that and moderating it. I thought it will be just a free-flowing thing with each of us taking about 6 minutes each to discuss a theme around education, whether it is around education or leadership or higher education. I've had a short conversation with all of them where I proposed this, that we'll go that way. And therefore, if I said I'll begin with the first 5-6 minutes of mine, and then we can hand it over. And I propose that we can go in the list where I see on my screen. If we can go with Professor Lalitha, followed by Professor Sudhir, the two of them, and followed by Nana, Professor Nana. And then as Ramurthy joins us and Kalpana joins us, they can speak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one strand of this topic, and I'm taking the liberty of defining what I want as my strand and speak about it. I want to take the essential strand of the importance of public education in India and why we need to support public education and particularly government school education. I want to bring in the essential theme of equity and quality in public education and lead on to two short points that I shall mention and pass on to Lalita and then to Sudhir and Nana and others. The other 2 points being the importance of teacher education as we discuss around quality education and leadership in education, as well as around the concept and theme of undergrad programs. So when I speak of the importance of public education, I want to begin by drawing attention to what is enshrined in our constitution of an equal society of fraternity and humaneness and justice and equity. And if these are the ideals that are enshrined in our constitution, we are still on a journey 70 years after we became a republic. And therefore, one of the key pathways to achieving those goals and ideals enshrined in our constitution is an equitable quality of education for every Indian. And therefore, the path towards that kind of a thing is essentially through public education. And that is why it is so important that we do everything necessary to support and strengthen public education in India. When I talk of public education in India, just a minute on the government school system. Today, despite whatever one might see about the influx of and greater privatization of school education, the fact is that for 60% of India's children, the government school is the only way to go towards a path that will break the cycle of poverty and hardship and disadvantage. And therefore, the government school plays a role that no other institution perhaps plays in molding the future citizen of India. Allow me and permit me the liberty to be slightly personal in this in terms of what I have done, because in these 18 years in my association with Azim Premji Foundation, we've been deeply engaged with contributing to the quality of government schools across the country. And recently, a few years ago, when I undertook a study of outstanding government school teachers, it took me across 5 districts where it only reinforced the importance of government schools, where we saw heroic teachers overcome all constraints, ignore all constraints, show tremendous resilience, commitment, and passion to provide the kind of education that will make the life of children in their schools. By 2021, we'll have 370 million. We'll have 370 million people in that age group of 15 to 29 or 14 to 29, which shows you how important it is that we do something about it. Otherwise, what we call as demographic dividend is just a demographic dividend that is not at all realized. We also know all the difficulties that we have in terms of quality of education. And while I have spoken to you about the heroic work by thousands of teachers, the fact still is there's so much to do in terms of what we can achieve through school education. When one considers where one should cut the Gordian knot, it can be a vexing problem. But let me take two stabs at it. The first stab at it is something that is recognized in the draft National Education Policy 2019, has been spoken of increasingly in the last few years, and I'm delighted about it. That is about the centrality of the teacher in this whole thing. And that centrality of the teacher to this whole effort is recognized by the fact that we must completely revamp our teacher education system. There is now a call for an integrated dual degree 4-year program where anybody can become a teacher only after undergoing a 4-year program with a science or an arts degree along with a teacher education program, which is what is proposed in the National Education Policy draft. And therefore, that could be a significant harbinger of better quality in terms of teacher education. There are other steps to be taken in terms of in-service education. I can quickly quote that some of the states are beginning to make an effort at it. And I must refer specifically to the state where I come from, that is Karnataka, where the Guru Chetana program has taken off as a significant initiative in-service teacher education. Given the time constraint, so I talked of the primacy of public education and the need to support government schools and how they are the backbone for anybody, and particularly for India in our context. I've spoken of the importance of teacher education and the centrality of teacher in this journey. And finally, I come to the fact, and I'll pass it on to Lalitha at the end of it, about how important it is for our undergrad programs to be of a completely different quality. It is a fact, and we make no bones about it, that our undergrad programs are pathetic or in very dire straits. We have 800 universities and 440,000 colleges across the country, and very often it is a desultory 3-year program that happens. What we need is a program where both disciplinary skills and disciplinary knowledge is combined with a good social sensitivity and awareness of social issues. Together, disciplinary knowledge along with an appreciation and understanding of social issues, together giving us a completely revamped under-education program. I'm very happy that in the National Draft Education Policy Draft 2019 that's up now and hopefully towards fruition, there is a significant amount of effort given towards how we must revamp undergrad education. I believe that if we address teacher education and undergrad education, two of the most important elements towards towards improving our overall education and especially our school education will happen from there. It is, as I said, a vexing problem. I have suggested to you 2 places where the Gordian knot can be cut, if I can use such an expression, but that's where we are. And I would like to hand over to Lalitha, having set the ball rolling with that kind of a context about the importance of equity and quality in our education, the need to support government schools, and perhaps that we should begin by looking seriously at our teacher education and revamping our undergrad programs. Over to you, Lalitha.
Thank you, Mr. Giridhar. I completely agree on the points raised by you, especially regarding the teacher training programs which are currently available, which is absolutely maybe non-existent. There are a few and far between organizations which hold training programs for teachers, and they do their best. But at the end of it, we all agree that a teacher has to be a lifelong learner. But unfortunately, that is not the case. We are not very good learners. We're definitely not lifelong learners. But we are there muddling along, trying our best with the children that we have. Now, I can only talk about the private school teacher because I have been one of them and I have trained many of them. And eventually I ran a school which had teachers who were very diverse, very, very diverse, not just language, but culture of teaching, not so much their own personal culture, but their own culture of teaching. Some of them are completely, all up on their, tricks. They know everything in the book. They are textbook ready when they come. But right now, we really don't need so much of textbook learning. We need the teacher to know her students very well and the world. Unfortunately or fortunately, today's children are much better traveled than their teachers are. And that's a fact we have to accept. Now, a teacher enters in an argument very often with the children in her class, saying, facts which they have visited, but the teacher hasn't. But she will break into an argument with the child. And I have so often had to tell them, do not argue. If you feel that you are, probably right and your child is wrong, just say that I'll check and I will get back to you. But it doesn't work. A lot of the time, the classroom just degenerates into something else altogether. But you like the fact that the teacher is there. It is so difficult to, invite people into this art of teaching. Teaching is absolutely a fine fabric which is woven with a lot of finesse, technique, communication, children relationship, parent relationship, and having to juggle the management on one side. All of that together, they are still managing to teach, which I think is a great thing. Year on year, I would be invited to various colleges in Bangalore to address students who are not just finishing their BA, but also postgraduate courses. And I would tell them, please just come and try teaching. Try it for a year or 2 years and see if you would like to take that into your, as your passion, as your career. But the fact that we don't get paid very much is absolutely a downer. And the fact that you have to deal with so many children in India, especially, a classroom strength is 35 plus in a section. And that's a lot. There's not much of teaching, learning happening. And we also have a theory which says that a child's attention span is directly proportionate to their age. So when you have a class of, let's say, 35 to 40 minutes, you have to make sure that whatever you want them to learn in that time has to be completed in the first 15 minutes. That's the time you have. So you have to hook them on to the subject, get them in, and make it quirky. Today's children do not want textbook learning because that's already there. They're all into finding things on the net. There's a lot of information out there, good, bad, average, and a lot of unnecessary, information is there. But they have to be able to find the correct information, and they look to the teacher. At the end of it, at least in India, we respect our teachers for who they are. We hold them in high regard. You have to be an absolute model for them, which is difficult to do because you have so many different types of children in a classroom of 35 and 40. The teacher just somehow manages to hold her own. And that's essentially what I feel. So there's a lot that they can actually do. The government, yes, needs to come up with training programs for in-school teachers, in-service teachers, which is not there at all. We are at the mercy of a school management when it comes to training. There are some school managements which really go out and put together a calendar of training for their teachers. But for the most part, they're left to do online, get a certificate from somewhere on something which might be of use, which may not be of much use. And that's the current situation. We have to push. I mean, there is a conversation which needs to be had between the governing bodies and school management, the private school managements. Mr. Giridhar, you are right, and you are on the right track with government schools. I do not have anything because I know that you are out there. Your organization is working towards it. But the private school teacher who's in there just to earn a supplement living out of whatever she gets, why should we expect them to give their all? We cannot, and we should not. We have to, there has to be parity of pay. A male teacher will probably earn 4 times of what a lady teacher does in a school. So that sort of brings down their level of commitment. Why would they commit? And the homework and the book correction, and it's a world of that is their social life too. Teachers really don't have a social life otherwise. Their morning to evening spent in a school with their colleagues is their social life, but they go back home and then they start corrections and preparing for the next day. And one tiny, question from a child will throw the teacher completely out of gear. So they are not prepared to be today's teachers. We really need to focus on that. I mean, I wish there was an organization which these school teachers could go to. I created a platform on which I could have teachers collaborating. I would tutor them on how to conduct themselves during interviews with their school heads, how to answer what question, and get and help them to get a decent salary. And that's what I used to do, and I loved doing that. I'm all for the teacher in a private school, struggling on her own, but definitely not giving up. They're all there for 25 years, 28 years. You see us such stories of them being devoted and married to their work, all for the love of educating children, young minds. We need to do something for them. And well, maybe after all of this is over, at least in India, we could probably get together and see what we can do for them as well. Yep, I think that's it. I will hand over to Nana. I think she's on mute.
Hi, sorry. Can you hear me?
Right.
Hi,
Yes, go ahead, Nana.
Okay, hi. Thank you so much, Felicia, for your insights. So I think, unlike you guys, I'm not a sort of professional teacher in a way. So just for a bit of context, my background, so I'm a university professor in Shanghai in China. So I actually spend most of my time doing research, but part of my time I actually teach undergraduate courses. But how I see education, it's not just I see it as two parts. So one is,
I'm afraid if you try to switch off your video and speak, does it come better? Just check that out.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me a bit more clearly now?
We can, but I could hear you well even otherwise.
Sorry, maybe my problem.
Let me know if this is a problem and I can turn it off again. Actually, this is one of the issues that I want to discuss with online teaching, not to visualize.
Go ahead.
That there are two streams to education that I see. There is a formal type of education, which Alicia went into a lot of detail in, which is actually the teacher having a specific subject, and then you're imparting that information to a group of students. So my experience with that, I teach large groups of undergraduates. Right now, I have a class of 130 undergraduates in different time zones, actually. So, but another aspect, which I think is an equally important aspect of education, is something informal. So, for example, I'm supervising a lot of undergraduate students. And also like some graduate students so in this informal type of education is helping our students to see the wider picture and developing themselves as people and to think in new ways. And this is the problem that I've seen to be quite more of an issue in China. And I guess when I speak to my Indian friends, it's a similar issue in India, because I guess the culture is kind of similar in the sense that there is I feel, in my experience, an excess respect for authority and for teachers, actually. So, the fact that they, over rely on the instructor to feed them information and to see knowledge not as something that is developed by them, but something that is handed on to them. And maybe it's because in both cultures, there's a really long, 1,000-year history of, pedagogy and a lot of good ancient texts. So maybe there's a lot of that. But I do find that it's a challenge, especially in this knowledge economy, and especially for developing countries like China and India, who are coming to the fore with a lot of bright young people, a lot of enthusiastic young people, but having this as an obstacle. Because I'm more focused on the research aspect and kind of wanting them to be a bit more creative rather than just absorbing information and memorizing information. But there is a little bit of that kind of obstacle, and there's no systematic way. There's something like Lily is saying. There's no group of teachers to come together who kind of discuss these specific issues that we kind of face here. So then way forward is getting more international people, like maybe that had education that were like overseas or in other areas where they're exposed to different kinds of thinking. And this is what's happening here, like a lot in China, for example, that Yeah, so this is one of the challenges I see, and I think, you know, when a lot of this coronavirus issues, when people can get back together, this is a good starting point to have this conversation, not within China, but also like China and India. Like, you know, I think there's really a lot of good like overlap and conversation to be had, like on that aspect, and I think but a lot of it is grassroots. So you say, okay, where do you begin? Like how do you do that? And just as, you know, an individual educator, I've only been doing it on a case-to-case basis, and actually only with individual students to try and see, you know, where they are on the spectrum of, you know, like taking what you say as absolute truth, and not questioning that to to the other side, where maybe they're questioning everything, which I think is quite a good approach. So, but then it's very individual, and you sort of need more backup, you know, to support that culture. But culture is something very difficult to change, because, you know, this has been around for, you know, hundreds of years, probably. So I definitely see that as one of the main challenges of, you know, myself now being back in China as an educator. And I think just to try and to improve that situation, just having more dialogue, and just on an individual level, in like encouraging students to think, like, to question the authority more, and just by doing something very simple. Like, for example, so I grew up in Australia, so I've only been in China for a year, and it's just very surprising that, you know, when teachers see you, when the students see you, they automatically say professor this and professor that. But whereas back in Australia or like UK, like where I was as well, like, you know, you always call people by their first names. So just like making very tiny changes that I feel it really makes a big difference to how they kind of approach. So I think even though it's a big problem, but there are always like very little things and very, you know, sometimes very easy things to try and change. And it's very good to actually get in contact with people and maybe like different instructors where, like, to share maybe like different like tiny little methods that that you might have to continue to try and improve this situation. And I think it's especially with the talent that I see, like here in China, and also what my Indian friends tell me, like in India and for enthusiasm, like there's really a lot of potential. Like once you start changing the students' minds, and, you know, and you know, really using their minds more fully and trusting themselves more. Instead of just relying on, you know, particular authorities, which, like you say, Lily, there's a bit of a time lag. Maybe that, you know, the teachers haven't traveled as much. So if you're relying on someone with less experience, then you know, you're holding them back. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on the key challenge, I think, for places like China or India, and, you know, how, like, the little steps we can take to move things forward.
Good afternoon, panelists. I'm sorry for joining late. I had a meeting pertaining to COVID with the Chief Minister, so I had to join a little late. I'm sorry for joining late.
So, Giridharji, are you there? Giridharji, you have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
So let me just come online. So I was just telling Professor Ramamurthy that thanks for joining, and I said that Lalita, Nana, and I have spoken already, and that you, Sudhir, would now take over and speak, and Ramamurthy can come in after you, sir. Over to you, Sudhir.
Okay, thank you, Giridharji. So good afternoon, friends, and my learned co-panelists. I just take the opportunity to thank the Women Economic Forum and Ms. Lakshmi Shankar, as well as Ms. Meghalai, for having me invited this afternoon to share my thoughts on this particular discussions which is going on. So what I'm going to do that, I'm going to just drop 3 quick points, simple points. And my pointers are very broad, especially, in fact, I'm going to include the broad challenges which are associated with education and society, and in the context of modernization. So, well, education or educational leadership for shaping mind in challenging times of COVID pandemic, to me, is nothing against the modern times in which we have been living, and which is infected and infested by various kinds of man-made viruses. They are viruses of modernization, growing consumerism, materialism, and aspiring to become wealthy or even filthy rich, and that too overnight, are some of the dangerous viruses which have deeply attacked our society. And unfortunately, we do not have their vaccines yet. However, education to me is the only hope and potent antibody which has the power to destroy these viruses. But the educational leadership, which is responsible for the education, has failed or is failing in fulfilling its duty to protect humanity from such viruses of the modernization. If at all we are serious and want our education to play its role in shaping minds for a better and brighter future, then education must be rescued and liberated from a system-centric approach. And I repeat it, so education must be rescued and liberated from a system-centric approach to it. You'll perhaps agree with me. From the ancient times, the very purpose of education has been to make education a way of life. Again, I repeat, to make education a way of life, but the modernization has unfortunately changed the narrative and this and narrative of this purpose to making education a means of life. This is not a philosophy, not at all. It is a harsh reality. This is what is the biggest dilemma and conflict of the modern times that we live in. And this is my first point. Moving further, by saving and liberating education from a system-centric approach, I mean giving complete freedom to institutions by obeying bare minimum compliances. In the system-centric approach to education, universities and institutions are found engaged very much in meeting out compliances, which push them hard to obey and operate within predefined frameworks, resulting which education has got confined or limited to stuff like books, curriculum, results, schools, grade sets, and finally the job ability. The core objective of education has therefore visibly shifted from shaping minds to fabricating minds. Eventually to what? To achieve the end goal, which is job. And this is my second point. My next point is to stop commercialization of education. Let education work objectively towards seamlessly integrating ethics, morality, value, and compassion into every subject and aspects that a human resource wishes to study and learn. But it has been challenging due to commercialization of education. Because of commercialization of the education sector, the educational leadership also got adversely impacted and not going transformational. Educational leadership remains adhered to either servant or transactional type of leadership. Therefore, big questions today are, what is the present education system trying to deliver? Why does everyone dream to study at Harvard, Oxford, Stanford, IIMS, or even my institution, IRMA? The fact of the matter is that if given the opportunity, everyone would want to study in these branded institutions. For what? Mainly because of getting a good career, which secures them a high value job. And high value job means the placement in top corporations or organizations at a high CTC. Good salaries and attractive designation tags are what institutions are today aggressively marketing as the core purpose of education, which is very sad. Hence, to me, decommercialization of education is the need of the hour. But it is not that easy. Education sector is established as a new industry. Education institutions have turned or become a profit-making private or public sector companies, which are engaged in manufacturing. Essentially, business managers, doctors, engineers, and so on and so forth. In the process, we are manufacturing more caged parrots. I'm using the word caged parrots instead of producing independent flying birds. The pedagogy or educational training is such which makes young human resources only doers. We are not making them leaders. When I look around, I find youths in their 20s who have become more sort of human robots. And this is what concerns me. And this is a big crisis of our time. We need more transformational educational leaders who can architect potential human resources to become evolved managers, if not leaders. And this is where I just stop. I would like to just summarize and conclude my points, which are three. One, to make education a way of life, not means of life. We out to salvage and free education from the system-centric approach to it. Make education and institutions more independent so that they allow to happen integration of social objectives into scientific and commercial innovations. Knowledge has to be imparted in place of distribution of degrees, and all this can happen when we start decommercialization of our education system. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sudhir. And over to Professor Ramamurthy.
Thank you, Dr. Giridhar, and all the panelists. I would like to concentrate on the higher education because all of you are teachers, very well established and very esteemed teachers. I'm not from the teaching fraternity, but very closely connected with education. We have to look at the current situation and see what are the challenges and what are the solutions that is possible. Otherwise, it may not be of great assistance. We are in the midst of very uncertain future, not having answers for many questions, like opening of schools, when the schools are going to open, when are the colleges are going to open, when are you going to conduct examinations, what are the methods of conducting examination, what are the methods of evaluation, and what is the fate of the rural community. We talk sitting in Bangalore, sitting in Delhi, sitting in urban places, we concentrate basically on the problems being faced by the urbanites, online education, and so many things. But when we go to rural India, when you go to rural places, what exactly is the situation, how we are going to handle? And I was very happy that Madam Lata Chako was mentioning about the teachers and training. Our teachers, they definitely, for the changed circumstances, require a lot of training. The teachers now, when you take online education, it's the teachers are evaluated not by the head of the department or the principal or the dean or whoever it is. It's by the parents. It's by, everybody is, they like to face the parents also when they express whatever they want to express in a particular manner. So they are being, made to get tuned to this situation. I'm sure that is teacher training will be a very important aspect which requires to be, tackled at all levels, both by the government, the private sector, everybody. Unless we train our teachers for the next 2 months, we'll not be able to take on this problem. It will be very, very difficult for us to, manage situation if the current situation continues for another 3 to 4 months. There are certain issues pertaining to the teachers. Most of us are, comfortable salaried positions. But when it comes to teachers, the salaries need to be paid. How the salaries can be paid? See, there are issues pertaining to the fee collection, whether fee is to be collected or not collected, how it is to be collected, whether it is to be collected over a period of 1 year. All these, directions that are being received from the multi-governmental agencies are creating more confusion than giving clarity for our activities. We're all in a forced indecisiveness, according to me. Our parents, they're not clear about sparing their time and invest in technology. Imagine a parent where there are 3 or 4 children, or 3 children at least, or 2 children. they have to give a laptop to them. Everybody will have to be provided with thing. All these days we were telling our children not to use the smartphones. We are resisting the temptation by the children. Now we are forced to accommodate all these things. How the parents are going to manage this? What will be their economic activity? How the resources are going to be managed? And when it comes to teachers, as already mentioned, they need to be put in extra effort, and they'll have to deal with a lot of health and emotional issues pertaining to the children. So they will have to see that they glue to their subjects, get expertised in the area of specialization. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to cope up with the current situation. It's going to be a huge challenge. And for students, being indoors, not going to friends, lack of outdoor activities, the psychological impact of these things, and ultimately it is in most of the places we have come across, a lot of children are becoming very, very aggressive in the house, not listening to the parents, and slowly leading to depression and these things happening. And when it comes to the government and the private managements, they need to upgrade the technology. They need to train the faculty. They need to upgrade the faculty for the challenges, because with the technology that's going to set in now, it becomes inevitable. Nobody can avoid. Either it's going to be online, or it's going to be offline, online, or it's going to be blended. This has come to stay. We like to equip our teachers. We like to see that the private managements also will have to put in a lot of efforts to see that the teachers come up to this level. And when it comes to government institutions, all of you know the existing situation. How best is our government institutions? I worked as registrar of Bangalore University. For 3 full years, I was heading the university. I have calculated. I know the expenditure per student in a university is much more than many of the private institutions. How can we justify that? So what is the outcome of that? We say that yes. See, what I mean to say is that we'll have to see the cost of education and encourage wherever it is required, whether it's private or somebody. Now we need a lot of investment in the education sector. The government is not able to invest. Government is not in a position to spend huge money on education. We need to find out philanthropists and people who are interested in. Not everybody is going to make education a business. But there are quite a sizable number of people, depending upon the policies of the government, depending upon the assistance that the government gives. A lot more people are there to come into education sector, which is absolutely essential, particularly when they want to concentrate on the rural areas. Government should go all out and see that this is done. Otherwise, we will not be able to reach out to the masses. We will not be able to upgrade the infrastructure. We will not be able to. There are many institutions. I have visited as from the Parliament committee, a number of institutions where we do not have even proper washroom facilities. This is the situation, actual situation. We cannot talk about some hugely funded, usage-funded, private institutions or universities or conventional universities. But actuality will have to be taken into account, and only then we will be able to think. These are all some of the challenges in India. We cannot overlook these things, and we cannot just ignore these things and think of reforms in education or shaping the minds of the youngsters. It will not be, the mindset cannot be changed unless the basic structure is properly changed, unless we provide facilities, opportunities. People in, how many people, somebody was mentioning just now, everybody wants to go to Harvard, how many people can do that? What percentage? Not even 0.1% of our population are capable of doing it. But we'll have to think about the 99% of the people. What is the government is going to do? What the entire society is going to do? How we are going to spread this to the common person in the country? And I feel the planning now with this to see that the proper delivery of the education is there. Within the family, there needs to be a lot of planning, the time and resources within the family. How much the parents will be able to spare on this? How much time they can spend on the children, how much money they can spend. The planning in the family is also very important, and exposing our teachers to the best of the resources, best content, best pedagogy, and best tools is very essential. With online education, with online it's coming into stay, this becomes very easy. Intensively for next 2 months, as I mentioned earlier, we need to concentrate on the training aspect of the teachers. We will have to take on the student community and see that the best is delivered to them. And our institution should gear up for online, on-campus online education, or off-campus online education, or offline and online blended learning. This becomes essential. This is the order of the day. This is going to be the future of the education system in the country. And the universities and institutions, according to me, should be very clear about their goals and objectives for 2021. Whether they want to assess and plan their objectives based on the students' performance, whether it is going to be on the faculty performance, whether it's going to be on the parent satisfaction, or whether it's going to be a combination of all these things, how they're going to plan. Because all the other earlier planning with your academic council, with your senate, your syndicate, whatever it is, whatever planning that you used to do for higher education, the universities will be totally different now. And these aspects need to be taken into think. And this is the time that the government should focus more on education. This is the time when the government should invest on education. This should be a very good opportunity for the government to see that the extra resources are mobilized and spent on education in the education sector also. This discussion is going on in the higher education ministry for a long time, but I don't know to what extent it will be able to be achieved in the present context is very, very important. I again urge that we should encourage with a lot of facilities and concessions to philanthropic private sector. Now we have Dr. Giridhar in Azim Premji University. You cannot just say that Azim Premji is just doing it for commercial purpose. There are there are regulations to monitor, regulations to control. But unless and until the education is widespread, unless the facilities are widespread, we will not be able to meet the challenges. The government should act as a facilitator and help with friendly policies and concessions wherever required. Then only we'll be able to get some solid results. And of course, work from home and the study from home culture is now to stay. Blended education will be the future. And we will have to know that the history has shown that our society responds very positively to such grave situations. You take London plague, because that was handled, the underground system, drainage system in the London was done during the plague system. It is still in use. It has created such good infrastructure because of the situation. Even H1N1 in South East Asia, a lot of medical facilities were created, and that is coming handy for them. So in education also, I feel the government need to invest more, and because all our teachers and students invariably get exposed to global culture, and they get closer to real world problems, technologies and methodologies. We need to see that every sector of the society, the parents, the teachers, the management.
Ramurthy, sorry to butt in, but I think we are.
I'll take only 1 more minute.
Yeah.
I'll take only 1 more minute, not more than that. I'm just mentioning some of the limitations that we have. As I mentioned about the huge rural population, untrained and unexposed faculty, and a budget for education which is very low need to be increased, and all the bureaucratic hurdles in seeing that the education policies are implemented need to be removed, and there should be a system of a proper functioning of the universities and the higher education bodies. This is all. Thank you very much. If I've taken more time, sorry.
No, that's cool. No issues. I just had to remind myself that I was a moderator, nothing else. Thanks, everybody. Meghalai, I think we've covered a few strands. We started with equity and quality of education, the importance of public education in India. We talked of the importance of teacher education and how we need to support the teacher, and the larger purpose and aims of education, the philosophical and ethical and moral underpinnings of why we must educate and why education can be the path towards higher goals that Sudhir talked of. Nana chipped in with international inputs and comparing and seeing similarities. And Professor Ramurthy gave us a larger, broad brush canvas of so many things to do in the sphere of higher education, talked of the importance that government must give to education. And I like the fact that he also looped in with the fact that we must be very cognizant of education for the disadvantaged and make sure that they are there with us in this path to journey. Thank you very much. I think Meghalai, it's 4:40.
Thank you, esteemed speakers.
So we're done.
For sparing the time. I'm so sorry the time is short and we had to cut you short. But now we have come to the important part of the session, which is awards announcement for the esteemed panel members here, Dr. Giridhar, Mr. K.C. Ramamurthy, and Professor Sudhir, Professor Lalita, and Dr. Nana. You've been awarded Exceptional Leader of Excellence by the Women's Economic Forum. Congratulations, all of you. And thank you for joining and inspiring all of us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We log off
Thank
now.
you.
Thank you very much, everybody. It was a pleasure to be on the panel with you all.
Thank you all panelists. Thank you. Thank you.
Everyone, good night.
Bye.
Dr. Mahesh, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
I think we have to wait for the speaker, Acharya Ravindran.
Yeah, Acharya Ravindra will be here in a moment. I spoke to him a few minutes ago.
Okay. Welcome speakers and welcome Dr. Mahesh and Acharya Ravindran. Dr. Mahesh Krishnamurthy, Ayurvedic Pulse Diagnosis. He's a moderator for this session and Acharya Ravindra, scholar and social worker. Welcome to the session and over to you, Dr. Mahesh.
Acharya Ravindra, namaskar. Very nice to have you on this session. I am the moderator for this session. Acharya Ravindra is an alumni of Regional Engineering College, Warangal, which is, I think, now in Andhra Pradesh. And after his education, he was inspired by Dayanand Saraswati, who was one of the chief mentors to this day. He introduced Bhagavad Gita for the management purposes, and he is known for many other spiritual works. So Acharya Ravindra was inspired by him, and then he moved on to master Sanskrit Vyakarana, which translates as Sanskrit grammar and linguistics. And he continues today to teach Shastras to scholars and conduct training programs and workshops for socially active citizens in India who have a deep interest and curiosity about our ancient culture. Also, he's involved in a lot of work which is related to the Indian ethos, the Indian society, and he's trying to bring in the traditional values which can fit into modern society. Acharya Ravindra, thank you very much. Welcome to this session. I would want you to just start your talk today, and I will ask questions in between. Acharya Ravindra, on to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Yes, please continue.
Mahesh. Just a small clarification. I am inspired by Swami Dayanand Saraswati, founder of Arya Samaj, who revived Vedas. The same name, two persons, and so some confusion. I am audible?
Yes, there is a lot of disturbance in between.
Oh, sorry. So, can I have the questions?
Sure. First, I have one question for you. You have a grand vision to guide humanity to re-establish society. This is primarily after seeing the worrisome state of the Indian society, and you encapsulate, which is encapsulated in our shastras, all the concepts from the ancient times, and you have embarked upon this journey to produce leaders who can reverse degradation. So you're working on this Vedic Gram project, which I'm sure is the connect to your vision. So my question to you is, can you give us a peek into this adventure that you're on?
Well, actually, Vaidigram project is a project where I had to create an environment with Vedic culture, all the ways of living, and all in according to the Vedic culture. When I started, I had no money in my hand, and I had to make it without any donation. So I asked some of my persons who acquainted to me to invest in land at one place, and this way I could raise some money. I bought some land, I purchased some land, and started some agriculture there. And now some part of the land is in the name of the trust where I am starting a Gurukul. Everything was ready, but COVID came in between, and so I had to wait a bit for that. So we have agriculture, Gopalan, that is dairy cat, Indian breed cow, and Gurukul is going to start. And we are going to enter the marketing sector also once agriculture and dairy farming both will advance. And in all these sectors, we want to introduce those scholars in Vedas and Shastras to correct things, and we teach Kautil Shastra also so that they'll conduct these things according to our traditions. So this was the way I have achieved almost half of it. I think achieved also.
I have another question. So my question is how can we embrace this ancient tradition in a new way, in a way that that we can improvise our lifestyle, our tradition? Can you throw some light on this?
In today's society, though it is not possible to embrace it completely, but in parts we can do it. The basic problem is person is becoming more and more individualistic today. The society is like that. But we are not, we are free to connect ourselves with others. We may form we may extend our family actually. Actually, we like we have a family doctor. Normally, people have a family doctor. Then you can have a family farmer also. You can have a family retailer also, where you can purchase things. It is not just like giving money and taking it. It is like connecting with the people, making him a part of your family, so that both of you get secured. He will also get secured, and you will also get secured. This is the way we can embrace a culture in terms of economics. Other ways are there in terms of spirituality and all of these things. Many things are there. Many people are making a lot of teachings there. But in terms of economy, basically we have to connect to the people as a part of your family. You should have an extended family. And from both sides, there should be some honesty that they should also provide services or the products, whatever they may be, to the highest quality possible. And we should also make them happy, pay them according to the necessities of them, and there should be a good bond between us. This way we can revive economy also. This way we can embrace our culture in terms of economy.
Okay, I have a
It is
question.
not impossible. Yeah.
Sorry to cut you there. I have a question. Now we are from the cities. Now I just want to understand from the economic strata. What kind of experiences have you seen? Are the people who are it's my assumption that people who have less have more to share, and people who have more usually share less. Is there truth in this, and how have you overcome this problem?
Not true completely, but we see it generally. Sometimes there are reverse examples also, but generally people who have more, actually they have more only because they give less. And so they are they are accumulating the money. Actually, those who have less, it is because they give more. And so they don't have much balance with them. So, but actually what my project is about is I'm not dependent on donations. I'm seeking investments. So people invest here and there. They have bank balances and fixed deposits and all these things. So I ask them, make this thing Vaidigram a place to invest. So you invest in the land. Once we have the land gives everything for us. Whatever we have, that is, we got that from land only. So this way, today I have 50 acres of land, almost no donations, only investments, basically. And from that, we have started an economy, already started, though we had to go a little bit long. And so I don't have any problem if somebody give less or more. Now I have my own economy and I'm independent of donations. I expect some donations also, but if I don't have any donations, nothing is going to stop in my project.
Oh, that's very interesting. Now I have based on your, I'm sure you are. I want to know if this plan of yours, where you are getting the investments from people rather than asking for donations, is this linked somewhere to our ancient system? I'm just curious to know.
In ancient system, what whatever I had read or studied, only education is a sector where we can take donation. There is no provision for taking donation for cows and all these things. This is all modern things, and we don't see that in Shastras. We can take a cow as a donation, not money to have cows and feeding them. Cows should actually feed us. So this way